we have literally just seen not only BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, but we have also seen 12 different states in the US who right now have been quietly buying MicroStrategy. You can see the names of the states who have been exposed for quietly buying more MicroStrategy, but we have more. We obviously know that BlackRock right now is squatting on 5% of all of the MicroStrategy that will ever be created. But I think we could potentially put a little bit of a tinfoil hat on when we start thinking about what Cantor Fitzgerald is investing in. That's right, he's Trump's right-hand man. And if we peek inside his personal portfolio, we can see that Cantor Fitzgerald is squatting on a lot of MicroStrategy, $1 billion of MicroStrategy, making up 39% of Cantor Fitzgerald's portfolio. Rob, we do know that Cantor Fitzgerald is going to be helping the US create its sovereign wealth fund. Are we reading into this a little bit too much to suggest that, hey, maybe America's sovereign wealth fund could include MicroStrategy into it? Are we seeing signs that the billionaires, the bankers, we haven't even mentioned the fact that JP Morgan, of course, a bank that's not a big fan of Bitcoin, but a bank who just quietly bought $100 million of MicroStrategy stock, is also buying Bitcoin. So if we have JP Morgan quietly buying MicroStrategy stock, if we have BlackRock being forced to admit that they have also increased their exposure to MicroStrategy over the last quarter, and we now have the man who's going to help create America's sovereign wealth fund, he is squatting on 40% of his portfolio being dedicated to MicroStrategy. Is it crazy to ask the question whether MicroStrategy could be included into America's sovereign wealth fund, Rob? Am I just reading into this a little bit too much, or what are your thoughts on this whole rabbit hole I think we might be exploring here?
Yeah, I mean, the rabbit hole goes deep. Howard Lutnick is the man who was the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, and he is now the Commerce Secretary for President Trump. He was gunning for Secretary of Treasury, but Trump sort of pushed him aside and said, no, it's okay, you're going to be the Commerce Secretary, and I'll give you the job of figuring out America's sovereign wealth fund. So they've got 3 months, I believe, to put together a report and then come back with their findings. But if you read the tea leaves and see how Cantor Fitzgerald just increased, 40% of a portfolio, that's your biggest bet, right? I mean, that's what you have the most belief in, and their belief is in MicroStrategy, them creating financial products, taking Bitcoin, turning it into financial products and selling it to the rest of the world. And so, yeah, we got this man right here. And I mean, Howard Lutnick, he's been in the Bitcoin game. He says that he owns hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin personally. I think he said that to Anthony Pompliano on a podcast with him when he was at the Bitcoin conference this summer at Nashville. He came out on stage and said that he had a shed load of Bitcoin. It sounded like something else, but he said shed load. And the other thing that we must remember about Howard Lutnick and Cantor Fitzgerald is that they are the custodian for Tether's treasuries. Tether, the stablecoin provider that has $100 billion worth of treasuries. They store them at Cantor Fitzgerald, and that's where Tether makes most of their money, right? They get the coupon, they get the interest on these treasuries, and they go and turn that into investments. One of their main ones being Bitcoin, right? So Howard Lutnick has been tangential to the Bitcoin world for many years now, as much as a big banker could be before this new Trump era and the opening up of Bitcoin to the financial markets. But yeah, I mean, these guys believe in MicroStrategy. BlackRock, 5% ownership. Cantor Fitzgerald, 40% of their portfolio in MicroStrategy. These guys really believe in Michael Saylor, his vision, and the fact that his company owns 478,780 Bitcoin. 2.3% of all the Bitcoin to ever exist. Yeah, these guys see what he's doing, know that his appetite for more Bitcoin has not slowed down, and Michael Saylor could be aiming for 1 million Bitcoin, right? He could be aiming for one Nakamoto, the equivalent of Satoshi's stash.
I like that. One Nakamoto. I've never heard that before, but we can see exactly what you're talking about there, Rob. I pulled up a chart, and in the chart might not be updated, but I do believe IBIT on the right-hand side of the chart is still outpacing MicroStrategy. But aside from BlackRock and Satoshi Nakamoto, there's not many entities who hold more Bitcoin, which I think this does open up a little bit of an interesting rabbit hole. Some people are saying we should be wary of BlackRock trying to buy so much Bitcoin, so much MicroStrategy. I've made videos in the past exploring some of the interesting wording that we found in prior BlackRock ETF filings. This is their initial Bitcoin ETF filing. On page 24, BlackRock says that if we see a hard fork, essentially, we get to choose what hard fork that your invested money with us is going to support. BlackRock says there is no guarantee that the sponsor, so BlackRock, will choose the digital asset that is the most valuable fork. Again, people have been pointing towards the fact that BlackRock is saying things like that. Now they're taking massive stakes in companies like MicroStrategy, one of the biggest Bitcoin-focused companies. We also know that, I hope my chart highlights what I'm trying to show you, but BlackRock is one of the largest shareholders in 4 out of the 5 largest Bitcoin mining companies in the world. So they have 6% of Riot. They own 6% of the shares of Marathon, and they are a number 2 shareholder of Cypher as well as TeraWulf Mining. So again, some people are saying BlackRock's either incredibly bullish on Bitcoin because they're trying to get exposure everywhere. It's not enough that they own hundreds of thousands, 500,000 coins, but they're buying 5% of MicroStrategy. They're buying majority shareholder positions in a lot of the mining companies. What do you think about the opinion or the hypothetical thought experiment of BlackRock just being in it because Larry Fink's been orange pilled? Or do you think there's something we should be paying closer attention to, Rob, when it comes to BlackRock?
So yeah, I mean, BlackRock, of course, is the world's largest asset manager. They've got $11.5 trillion to manage. But I think it's also important to remember that it's not like Larry Fink is just sitting on $11 trillion and it's his and he can move it however he wants to, right? He's investing this money on the behalf of other people. It is true that with that 5% ownership of MicroStrategy, they do have 5% of the votes, right? When it comes to where the company should go. If there's a shareholder meeting and there's a vote put up, they are able to vote on behalf of the people which they own that stock for, of course. So it is interesting in that regard as to how the sort of direction they could push, but still it's only 5%, right? I mean, Michael Saylor has a much larger share of MicroStrategy than I think BlackRock ever will. And so, and that's the beautiful thing also about Bitcoin is that it doesn't really matter how much of the network you own. You can't stake this thing, right? You don't get more Bitcoin for having a larger Bitcoin stack. It just means that you can move X amount of Bitcoin at your own free will. I think what's more sort of interesting from a geopolitical standpoint, it might be the ownership of the miners. I think as time goes on, having hash rate within your own country's borders is going to be more of a matter of geopolitical importance. The fact that you can ensure that out of X amount of time, you will be able to get into a block and move the Bitcoin as you wish and not be at the will of somebody else. So yeah, I think who knows? Maybe there will be a push at the end if things get crazy to try to nationalize something like a MicroStrategy or these Bitcoin miners. And BlackRock has definitely, whether it's the 2008 financial crisis or 2020 COVID, BlackRock has been put in a position to sort of clean up these messes and to dole out the money as they see fit to try to fix them. So yeah, they hold a lot of power. Some people say that they're like the fourth arm of the US government, right? So money talks, they've got a lot of it and they do have a lot of power. But the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is that having more of it does not grant you any more power of the network over anybody else who just has a couple of Satoshis, right?
Well, this is the beautiful thing about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a decentralized network. It is an unstoppable network. We always, again, encourage people to self-custody their Bitcoin. Please do not own BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF. They just openly told you that it doesn't matter if there's a hard fork. We could choose the uneconomical chain. So if you own BlackRock shares of their Bitcoin ETF, you might be stuck holding a big pile of poo. You might be stuck holding the fork of Bitcoin that is not worth anything. This is why we always encourage you guys, self-custody your Bitcoin, not your keys, not your coins. This is why we always encourage you to check out what Rhino Bitcoin is doing. We think they're the all-in-one Bitcoin super application. They let you buy Bitcoin, sell Bitcoin, even use the Bitcoin Lightning Network to send Bitcoin anywhere around the world. And in the not too distant future, they're going to be coming out with some really cool features that will allow you to do things like borrow against your Bitcoin. So we highly encourage you guys to check out what Rhino Bitcoin is doing today. They're even going to give you guys $10 of free Bitcoin if you sign up with a promo code Bitcoin News. So that's one word, Bitcoin News. Check out what Rhino Bitcoin is doing. Everything you need to know to learn about Rhino and get started buying Bitcoin the right way. That is through a Bitcoin-only application that's going to teach you about self-custody. Everything you need to know about that is linked down below. So check out what Rhino is doing today. And again, go get yourself $10 of free Bitcoin while you still can. I'm not sure whether companies will be giving out $10 of free Bitcoin in the future, Rob, but I feel like those days are numbered.
Giving out $10 worth of free Bitcoin might still happen, but it's just a question of how many sats will that get you, right? Today, that's still 10,000 sats, but in the future, that might just be 1,000 or 100, right? So yeah, get those 10,000 sats while you still can.
It's such a mind flip to start thinking in Satoshis. I try my best to think about everything in terms of Bitcoin. And it is a lot easier now with Bitcoin at $100,000 a coin, but you make a great point. 10,000 Satoshis, one day could be worth a lot of money. One day it could be worth an incredible amount of money, especially if we do continue to see banks doing what Citibank has recently done. $6 trillion State Street and Citibank are launching Bitcoin and crypto custody. I'm still pretty shocked when I see headlines like this, but I think headlines like this really reinforce the fact that, we're very, very blessed to be able to buy 10,000 sats, Satoshis, for the price that they are today. And I'm just not sure how much longer we're going to be able to wait around and take advantage of these super cheap Bitcoin prices.
Yeah, I mean, these Citibank coming out and saying that they want to launch Bitcoin custody is a huge deal, right? Of course, Michael Saylor laid out the plan to $5 million Bitcoin in his mind. Number one was the ETFs, of course. We got that. Number two was the FASB accounting rule changes where Bitcoin could be marked to market instead of just reported at a loss whenever it went down. You had to mark it down on your balance sheet, but could now mark it and report those gains on your financial filings. And then three, of course, was for banks to be able to custody Bitcoin. And with the repeal of SOB 121 and the end of the Biden regime, we are seeing banks jumping right in. And yeah, I mean, Bitcoin is an amazing thing that you as an individual can custody your own keys by just remembering 12 words in your head, and you can travel anywhere and maintain full sovereignty and control over your Bitcoin. But when it comes to things like pension funds and whatnot, that is not the best solution, and you want to put it with a quote-unquote reputable place. A place like Citibank is probably where you want to store your Bitcoin if you're a big pension fund.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a great point as well. I mean, there's different horses for different courses. And like we mentioned earlier in the stream, a Bitcoin IBIT BlackRock ETF could be used by someone who might have, Bitcoin they might have money, in like a Roth IRA or somewhere where they can't buy direct physical Bitcoin. That's a little bit outside my realm of expertise. We just call them superannuation accounts in Australia. But I believe that, the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF, that's one way to get exposure to Bitcoin in a Roth or some sort of retirement account in the US, Rob, is that right?
Yeah, with your 401k, you can purchase these financial instruments as you would through any brokerage, and MicroStrategy and IBIT are one way to do that.
Okay, that's very interesting. And again, kind of like you say, these banks right now are aggressively accumulating Bitcoin. But what I find really interesting is that the banks are not alone. We are now